Hey everybody, this is Rustin with Metalholic Radio, and you just heard Mach22 out of Philadelphia. That was Don't You Give Me. And with us tonight, we've got Ty, Frank, and Lamont of Mach22 with us. How are you doing, man?
Bro, how you guys doing?
What's up?
We are doing absolutely wonderful. We're thrilled to have you. You guys have had a monster year out there.
Man, it's been really fun.
You know, and the rest of the world is not really going to get a chance to learn about you until 2013 when you put out the debut album, American Swagger, I believe is what you're calling it. But for those of the rest of us who don't have a full taste of you guys yet, give us a little backstory on the band, how you guys all came together.
Cool. Well, it's funny because the band was kind of like a project that I had for a little while. And I just never had the right guys in the band at the time. And then finally, I got the guys. It first started with Ty. And then once Ty got into the band, it led to me meeting Frank. And then our bass player was leaving at the time, so it was perfect time for Frank. And then we ended up getting with our other rhythm guitar player, Sebastian, who came in because he also taught with us, School of Rock. And Ty got me a job at School of Rock, so that's how I was able to meet Sebastian. And then the same night that we met Frank, and Ty's first gig was Damien's gig. He was playing with another band. So it was kind of like, like serendipitous, like the fact that we all kind of like, were in the same building at the same time. And then like a year later, we're all like in a band together. So it was actually like really cool.
How long have you guys actually fully been together now as a unit?
I don't know. What would you say?
Jeez, as the unit right now, like 5 months, 6 months?
Yeah.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah,
No.
since about the end of August, I would say. Probably.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's pretty friggin' incredible that in that amount of time you were able to put together such great material, get Slash to fall in love with you, pick you out of 3,000 bands for the Guitar Center contest. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
I'll let Ty start this one because it kind of started as a brainchild of Ty.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Well, in April, I heard about the contest, and I submitted our song "Don't You Gimme." That was our only song.
We didn't have a video for it.
No video. Nope. It was a different lineup then, back then, and
we just put it through. Yeah.
And then we got a call, I would say, at the end of the summer.
Yeah.
At the end of the summer, we got a call about our gig, which was then on September 14th.
Yep.
And then from there, we were picked out of the top 20. And then we just found out about the grand prize.
Yeah, like just maybe a week before Christmas, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Merry Christmas, obviously,
Yeah. Christmas,
Well, and it's funny because when I listen to your guys' the music that I've had a chance to hear so far, I mean, everybody talks about the references to Zeppelin and stuff like that and that traditional rock sound, but I actually heard quite a bit of that vibe that I got when I first heard Guns N' Roses, sort of that guitar play that Slash has and the builds that he has.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for noticing that.
Definitely.
Definitely.
I mean, I know I love that music. Ever since I was a kid. I know, Frank did also. So did Ty. I think and it's funny because we were in a band. We actually had a drummer in the band, and before we got our drummer now, and he basically told us that, oh man, I don't like Guns N' Roses, and I was just like, huh?
Yeah, right away. I couldn't understand that, man. How could anybody not like Appetite for Destruction? One of the best records in history of rock. You know?
It's like not liking Zeppelin 1. It's like, how can you not like that album?
Yeah, Toys in the Attic.
Right.
Anything. I mean,
exactly.
Chapter 1.
Well, I was talking with somebody the other day. As a matter of fact, I was talking with Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses, and I said to him and the other guys in the band, I said, it seems to me that there's been a lot of great albums in the last 20 years, but it really seems to me that Guns N' Roses album, Appetite, was the last truly seminal hard rock album.
Yes.
Nobody makes them like that anymore.
Nah.
Agree with you 100%.
You got
Absolutely.
that right.
Feel the same way, there's been some great records since then, but nothing with that kind of rawness and sincerity in the music,
Yeah, man.
Well, and one of the things that I had said, and I've said this to a few people lately, that it seems like we're missing is there was a lot of nuance, aside from the organic nature, the feel and everything that you were just talking about. There's a lot of the nuance that we're missing from songs these days, because, and I think in all of the Pro Tools and everything else, and all these kids in their garages doing cut and paste and everything, they come up with a riff, they copy it, they throw it together and slap some stuff on it, and there's none of the nuance there. I mean, like if you listen to Barracuda by Heart, you got the little harmonics on the guitar. On the second verse, you got that little guitar trill thing.
Competition.
Yeah, like, it's funny. We agree with everything you're saying, too. I mean, when Hart and other bands recorded those classic records, a lot of times, I mean, they couldn't use Pro Tools to cut and paste, and, so they would have to keep getting those parts and nailing them until they nailed them exactly the way they wanted, or make a brilliant mistake and keep it and end up having that be a hook,
Yep.
And, like, that's why I think music today, well, we all were talking about this too. Yeah. It's kind of, you have trends and fads. I think the whole recording process is part of that trend and that fad, and it's taken away from some of that reality that you're mentioning here, Yeah. That's what we all, we all feel that way about it.
It's definitely a disconnect when you have to play a guitar riff that's supposed to continue on for every verse, and you cut and paste it and copy it.
It doesn't sound human.
Nah. It doesn't even sound perfect. It's supposed to sound perfect, but it just sounds off.
Yeah.
No robotic music.
No robotic music.
Well, and it takes away some of that, and I don't know if it was because back then you had more producers who sort of sat back and listened and said, what would sound really cool here is if we did this with the guitar, or you did this little fill with the drums. And now with everybody just making it on their computer and everything, there's just none of that where you know what I'm talking about, where you're waiting for that moment in the song where that guitar is going to do that certain thing here, or the vocal is going to go up here. That only happens maybe one time in the song, but you wait for it to happen.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You sense it's coming, and it shows up where you expect it to be. It's still a pleasant surprise,
right?
Yeah,
And half the time you do it too early in your head because you're waiting for it so much.
Yeah.
So we have to ask the generic questions because you're a brand new band. Everybody's just getting a chance to learn about you. So for each of you, tell us a little bit about sort of your epiphany moment when you came to music, where it was sort of like, this is what I want to do, and maybe some of your influences for what you write and for what your instrument or whatnot, or in your case, Lamont, your vocal inspirations.
Gotcha. You want to start, John?
Well, I was definitely inspired by Jimi Hendrix. I mean, my only music before then was like a recorder in school and boys choir. So seeing Hendrix being like wild and crazy was totally different than what I was used to. And I took guitar lessons, and Hendrix definitely got me started. And he still influences me to push the instrument further. Even now, even in my 20s, after I've, been playing for a while,
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And was there a moment for you when, whether it was a song or an album or something, or a concert you saw, and you just went, shit, this is what I have to do. This is what my life is going to be?
Like, when I was listening to, like, Red House, like, blues, like, kind of riffing like that, I dug. And then, of course, like, visually, like at the Monterey Pop Festival, like smashing like the flaming guitar and stuff like that. Come on, man.
What about you, Frank?
Oh man, I don't know, my moment. There's been so many moments.
Right.
I think the first, I got bit by the rock and roll bug. The band that bit me was AC/DC, and the song was Hell's Bells. I was on a Cub Scouts camping trip, and it was late. We were all sleeping in the tents, and I heard the bell, start ringing from Hell's Bells, and me and another dude snuck out, followed the noise, heard that riff kick in, and ever since then, I quit the Cub Scouts, and I went out and got a guitar with my allowance and started playing, and that was pretty much it for me. I never looked back after that. That's what I've always wanted to do, is just play music, since then, but.
Nice. And are there a few bassists that sort of, that you sort of took from to give you.
Oh, absolutely. I love like Tom Hamilton from Aerosmith, Duff McKagan. You know, oh man, I can't even think right now. Deep Purple. Oh, jeez.
Roger Glover.
I'm trying to think. Yes. Thank you. Brain fart, dude. Sorry. and like so, like I just love a lot of like '70s hard rock and like even the funk and some of the like pop music. Like had some unreal bass lines, you know, so melodic and catchy. And like I kind of like that's kind of my influence, you know, that era. And I kind of like trying to create that sound in what some of our stuff that we're doing, you know. It's like what I dig. But
and then what about you, Lamont?
Well, basically, I was, growing up Camden, New Jersey. I was like a product of being in the band program, and I always grew up around musicians in the house. And I remember always being in the band program, and I remember being in a vocal class where it was more of a chorus class, and we were just sitting there, and they were playing a bunch of great black artists, you know, because I was in the all black high school, junior high school, and of course it was like Black History Month, so they wanted to like kind of educate some of the kids. And I'm watching, and there were two musicians that kind of stuck out to me in there. One was James Brown, and I saw him moving, and I saw him singing and screaming, and I was just like, "What the hell is this?" And right, and imagine this. I'm watching this. And like my world just exploded. I saw James Brown, and then right after I see Jimi Hendrix live at Woodstock, and I was just like, okay, who is that guy with the big afro and the guitar backwards? I was like, who is this guy? I got to figure this out. So it kind of just stuck with me, and just seeing all kinds of performers from Michael Jackson, and also being like, when MTV was playing music videos, it was like, I didn't want to get caught out in the streets like getting shot or getting killed, so I just locked myself in a room and I just watched anything that came on like public broadcast, whether it was symphony, whether it was jazz, whether it was, and then watching MTV and just watching like Headbangers Ball, and then watching like all the music videos in rotation. I didn't care who the artist was, what color they were. If it sounded good, it sounded good. And it was one of those things that just kind of stuck with me all those times. And, and by nature, I'm a saxophonist, but I've always sung, whether it was in church or whatever, but I never sang lead. I was always like, one of the, backing vocals, whatever. And I had a couple people when I was in college say, you have a really good voice. You should maybe change your vocal to vocal major. I was like, nah, man, I'm a saxophone player. I'm a musician. I'm not a singer. I leave that for you guys. And then eventually I just kind of got into it because I got more into songwriting after, going through a series of, life events, and you want to vent somehow. And how better to vent either through lyrics or through writing a song or something. And it just kind of grew, and I was starting to write songs for other people. And then I was singing reference vocals and have them come and sing over, and they were just like, people just be like, yo, who's that singing? And I was like, that's me. And they was like, dude, you got a really good voice. They're like, you should sing. And I was like, yeah, I've been hearing that lately a lot, man. And I never thought anything of it. And then, just out of necessity, just because I got tired of, things not happening because I had to wait for other singers to come in and do, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to sing it myself. And then I did, and then it just, it was an epiphany moment for me. It just kind of like clicked, and I was like, okay, this kind of feels good now. And then, luckily I was able to get around some really cool guys, just to kind of help me, get along and nurture, everything that I learned. Here I am today, rocking with some really cool brothers, man.
There you go. And you got a couple of great guitarists already in the band, in Ty and Sebastian. Sebastian is Jeff LaBar's son, isn't he? Are they related?
Yeah, it's his son.
That's what I thought. But so you got these two great guitar players in the band, but you play guitar yourself too, don't you, Lamont?
Yeah, I play guitar, and there was a time where I was playing rhythm guitar, and before Sebastian joined the band, and I was still singing and playing rhythm. And then it was a show that we did where we had a good friend of ours come in and sit on a guitar, and he didn't bring his. So I said, yeah, you can play mine. So he played my guitar, and I just sang. And then that was kind of an epiphany moment between Frank and Ty.
Game over.
They were just like, wait a minute, Lamont, we kind of like what you're doing without the guitar.
Remember, he was just talking about James Brown's moves? Well, he put down that guitar, we saw that, and we were like, holy shit. Ooh, excuse my language. That's how we go, man, We were like, dude, you are a classic rock frontman, a dying breed, like, please, like, do that, front the band. Like, he's awesome,
Yeah, thanks, man. It was just fun, and it allowed me to actually, now looking back at it, because it was definitely some, feeling me being a musician, I kind of felt like there was I had a shield, because I've always had an instrument in my hand, whether it was anything. And then I just had to kind of come to the realization that now, like, my microphone is actually an instrument, and my voice is an instrument, and for visual purposes, my body is also an instrument for entertainment value. And it's kind of like, I kind of had to, like, shut down all my inhibitions about singing without an instrument in front of my hand, and just kind of get over my own insecurities about it. And then eventually, I did it, got more comfortable with it, and it allowed me to focus more on my singing, so that way the band sounds the best that it can sound. Because I got like two fucking awesome, like, guitar players, Ty and Sebastian. Got my boy the anchor, Frank Day, that got a great drummer, and it's Dame. Like, okay, you know what? Oh, yeah, and Dame on drums, and it's like, I can't let these guys down. It's like, I have to make sure I do the best that I can vocally. And putting the guitar down was probably, in hindsight, the best decision that ever happened, for me. At the time, it, seemed weird, but then I was like, you know what? If it's going to help the band, then I got to, swallow any insecurities I have and just man up and, put my big boy pants on and just get out there and embrace it.
Well, and you get back to serendipity there, too, because it was just sort of one of those things that happened by chance. But, it's funny. People always say they love to go see live music and live performances. And I've noticed for myself, and I'm sure you have, too, it's like you hear a band on record sometimes. You haven't seen them live yet. And these guys are pretty good. Then you go see them live and you just fall in love with them. And it's because your body and the guys in the band, it's all a part of it. That the nuances of how you move and everything adds something to the textures of the music that is just not something you can put your finger on. It's one of those intangible things. And one of the things I noticed in watching you perform is you have a lot of soul, a lot of swagger. So it's interesting you guys are naming the album American Swagger.
Yeah. And that was an idea that Ty kind of thought of, because that was actually a project that Frank had, and that name just kind of like stuck out for a lot of different reasons. For Frank, it stuck out for obvious reasons, because he had, like what did it actually mean for you? Like,
I just, miss the days of, like, I love 70s rock and stuff like that. And, Aerosmith was America's rock band, and in my opinion still is, and except Slash, of course, and Guns N' Roses. But yeah. I feel like we were talking about, the last great record ever made, was probably Appetite. And, we kind of just want to try to, recreate something that we love,
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how it came up, Yeah. But we'll see, that's how the idea came about. And then the whole merge of us together as a band brought that American Swagger, and it kind of like just solidified from where each of us have walked to where we walk together now, So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly fits from everything I've seen and heard so far. And I don't know what's in the water up there in Pennsylvania, but we're really starting to get some great new bands just in the last few years, and it's starting to feel like something of a renaissance of the 70s and 80s. But, you guys came out of there. My favorite new band right now is Hailstorm, just blowing shit up out of Pennsylvania and everything. So I don't know what's going on up there, but keep it up. Now, when is the album set to come out, or do we not have a release date yet? Is it sort of in the wind, or...
February 12th is the date that we're looking to actually drop it. We're pretty in the mixing stage now. We got like 2 new songs that we wrote, which was kind of like a thing that we needed, because some of the other songs were written when different members were in the band, and then we just like came together and put 2 new songs together with the unit that we have now. And that's kind of the way we want to like present ourselves to the world, with like the band currently as it is. So people can really get a chance to feel like what they're going to get live.
Well, and speaking of the band currently as it is, you guys said you really sort of got this lineup together in August. Then in September, bam, you guys were doing the Slash thing. What was it like getting to play with Slash?
Man,
awesome.
Man, it was like everything you could imagine about that moment was just amazing.
And have you guys talked? Are you guys already in the works on getting out on the road and taking this across the country? Any tour packages in the work that you can share at this point?
We're definitely looking to do some road work, and we're gonna start. I think maybe February. We're gonna start with a little northeast trek. I think we're gonna do like New England, New York, Connecticut, do some spots in PA, and then also do like Maryland, DC, maybe Virginia. But if there's an opportunity for us to come out around that way, man, that'd be great.
Well, we want to get you everywhere, all across the country, because, again, lots of swagger, lots of rhythm and soul to it, and just a lot of that classic 70s and some of the 80s feel to it that we've been missing, that passion, that organic nature, that vibe that rock and roll has been missing. So it's so great to hear again. So we can't wait for it. American swagger. So it's the end of the year. I have to ask you guys, well, I'll ask you guys 2 questions for each of you. What is your all-time number 1 album? And then what was your favorite album of 2012?
Wow. Who wants to start?
That's a freaking tough question.
It's a tough question. Let me see.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. For some reason, actually, my favorite album of this year is, and I don't want to take any thunder from anyone, I think it has to be Apocalyptic Love. It's just, I really like Miles's contribution, and he really wrote a lot of good things, and the kind of songwriting that he wrote is not empty, is not shallow. It actually has some meaning, and it sounds like it's some stuff that he personally went through. So in terms of new albums, for me, I think that's probably one of my favorites. I mean, there's probably a few more once I get off and be like, ooh, shit, I forgot to mention that one. All-time favorite album, man, that's a hard one because I have so many, me personally, I have so many different, likes, but I mean, I think there was, I think either Bitches Brew, Miles Davis is one of my favorites, only because it was at a period where he broke his shackles and he wanted to do what he wanted to do, and he was being really influenced by Sly and Stones and Hendrix and all the new music that was coming out in the 70s. And he ditched his jazz musician persona, which was wearing the Brooks Brothers suits, and he went to wearing the flashy clothes, platform shoes, big glasses, grew out his afro. He was so pimped out, and musically it broke every rule. And he wasn't thinking about making money. He wasn't thinking about if this record is going to sell, because when he was signed to Sony at the time, they were all saying man, this stuff is not going to sell. There's nothing like it. And he really didn't care. He said, I have a statement that I want to make. And he stood his ground. And it's still something that's emulated by a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And just for me, it stands out to me just because it's he just didn't care. And he was always a trendsetter, and he never followed the rules. He knew the rules, but then he also knew when to break them in the right ways. And it kind of was a blueprint for me, and
Well, that's the thing. When you throw all that crap out and just play it from the heart and whatnot, that's when the best stuff comes out. And I got to agree with you. Slash's album is one of my favorite albums of the year, too. And when I originally wrote the review of it, I had said at the time, it felt to me like listening to the songs, listening to Miles and vocal style and everything. I said, people have been waiting for how many years for the next great Guns N' Roses album? And I was like, that's it. Because it really did sound like that could have been the next album after Appetite.
Yeah, it's really organic vibe. And kind of cool that, Slash was able to surround himself with, quality musicians that think that same way. And those guys that he had in the band, we got a chance to really get a chance to meet those guys.
Oh,
and
awesome, man.
They were so sweet to us, man, and they, made us feel like we were.
They're all super talented too, man.
They made us feel like we were in the league. They didn't make us feel like this is a charity and hey, good guy, yeah, you're doing your thing. No, they actually made us feel like we belonged in the ranks. No matter where on the totem pole we are compared to him, he made us feel like we were in the league, and I think that was the most important to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how you know how what he plays and performs and does is so genuine and everything. So what about you, Frank? What album sort of your seminal album, and what album really struck you for 2012?
I'm with you guys for 2012. I love Apocalyptic Love. I think that Slash and Miles have a killer chemistry going on with the songwriting and the rest of the band as well. I think that they all have a chemistry that works great as a unit, and I'm looking forward to seeing that stay around for a long time. Because I'm just a fan of great music, and it's great music, and it's good to hear it's back. And geez, as far as like all-time records, I mean, I really don't know what to say because I just love everything, you know. But I mean, I don't know. My favorite band ever is Aerosmith, you know. Like, I love old Aerosmith, so I have to go with Toys in the Attic.
Yes,
you know?
I was waiting for him to say it. I knew he was going
to. That's my favorite Aerosmith album too. So great choice there. And what about you, Ty?
I probably have to say like Hendrix. I like.
Oh, see, that's another one.
One that I really like is 1970 Band of Gypsies, because it was a totally different, like, kind of like what Lamont was saying. I don't know, it was a different direction, and it was really unexpected. It was really heavy, and I dug it because it was a live performance that they did on New Year's, and I thought that the live vibe was great, and you know, especially with Buddy Miles and Billy Cox too.
Oh, hell yeah.
And yeah, I like the Slash album too.
we all record, you know.
Well, hell, how could you not like it? Because there is some of that vibe in your music, as I said before. So
definitely a major influence, and he's like, the way I felt when I was around him, I felt like he was like, you know, like cool, like the cool big brother. He just kind of like, hey man, you know, I've been, you know, I know you guys are, man. You know, you guys sound pretty good. You know, and just hearing it coming out of his mouth, and just, you know, asking him like, oh man, you know, how's the tour? And he was like, oh man, it's been kind of rough. You know, we had, you know, been kind of rough, and finally got some rest. And he was feeling a little sick that night too, so he had to kind of like split. And I think he got like his humidifier and some meds, and he just kind of like took it easy before the show.
Still rocked his ass off.
He sure did.
You know?
But when we got a chance to talk to him, he, you know, like I said, he really made us feel welcome. That whole band, the band made us feel welcome. The crew made us feel welcome. House of Blues in Lang City made us feel welcome. Like, they didn't make us feel like we didn't belong there. We got the same, you know, treatment to a degree as human beings, and also as, you know, performers that night. That just made everything work.
The last question I have to ask, obviously, because again, we're trying to introduce you to the world at this point. Mach22, everybody's got to know where the name came from. Was it just something you pulled out of a hat, or was this something that there's a story behind?
Well, it's always an interesting story. Well, like I said earlier, I'm a saxophonist by nature. I've been playing saxophone ever since I was like a little kid, and there was a time where I was like really passionate about being a jazz musician. You know, I love like John Coltrane, Stanley Turrentine, Duke Ellington, any Freddie Hubbard, Miles Davis, like any of the greats. And I had a journey where I actually went to New York to pursue that dream, because that scene is very live and relevant there. And I went there to meet with a lot of people. And in my time of just like growing and just being influenced by everything else, you know, I started to realize that there was no limitations in music. It's like, if you're a musician, you shouldn't be limited to just whatever instrument you play. If you feel like singing something, if you feel like grabbing a drumstick and beating on a conga or anything that's music related, and you have a statement, you should be able to make it on any instrument. And I was starting to get more into singing, and I didn't want to be pigeonholed, because people can do that a lot. A lot of people know me as like, a jazz saxophonist. So I really wanted to start singing in this, in this league, and I didn't want any kind of, oppositions against me. So I wanted to come up with a band name, and I was working this job, and I kept seeing Mach this, Mach that, and I was like, what does that mean? And I looked it up, and it's kind of like a shortened word for machine. And I was like, wow, and I was going through some kind of holistic thing, and I was like, man, like human beings are like the perfect machine. I said, we might not work 100% all the time, and we might have like defects and things like that, but in terms of a machine, human being is the perfect machine. And then I was like, and this was, of course, before the guys joined the band, so I don't want to make it seem like it was a dictatorship. And I said, I came up with the name, and that's what it is. Kind of one of those things. I wanted a cloak for myself, so I can be free to do what I do without people saying, I'm not going to give it a chance because he probably is going to suck at it, because that's not what he has been doing most of his life, even though I've always sung, but it wasn't like primary for me at the time. And then I was like, and then my birthday is on the 22nd of July, so I was like, Mach22. And I was like, that's kind of cool. It sounds like something. And instantly, as soon as I, started saying it to people, people were like, and I don't know if they were bullshitting me or not, but people, it's weird how when you talk to people a certain way with a certain degree of confidence, they think what you want them to think. And I actually said to some people, they were like, oh man, you playing around town? And I was like, yeah. They're like, what's the name of your band? I was like, Mach22. And they were like, I think I've heard that band. And I'm just saying, I'm like, you ain't never heard of the band because I just the name you out.
That's awesome. Guys, yeah. Lamont, Frank, Ty, thanks so much for taking the time. Hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again sometime after the album comes out and everybody's getting a chance to hear some of it. American Swagger comes out February 12th. Congratulations on the big win of the Guitar Center contest, and we just can't wait to hear the rest of the album because what I've heard so far is fucking phenomenal. And with that in mind, we're going to head out of here with some Mach 22, I Am Just a Man.